Yeah, you know what they are, right? Like shield, knight, club, crown. Perfect.
Yeah, shield, horse, hammer, king. Yeah, got it.
You know what? I actually know all the stones.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure that one's a knight, but hey,
You know best. Prove it to me. Sure. So yeah, start. This one is a crown. Wait. What?
Throughout the mythical land of Runeterra, there is a game played by many of its people, called Tellstones King's Gambit. This two-player game is advertised as a duel of minds, with bluffing opportunities everywhere. Players will manipulate 7 stones, placing them, flipping them face down, and of course, swapping them. Let's see if this game, set in Riot Games universe, translates well to the 21st century.
In Tellstones, 2 players will be locked into a memorization duel where stones are going to be flipped face down and swapped around. The goal of the game is to be the first to reach 3 points. On a turn, you'll be allowed to do one of 6 actions. For the first 3 options, you tell your opponent to do them, those actions being place a stone, turn a stone face down, and swapping any 2 stones. The 4th action lets you peek at a stone, and the last 2 actions are what actually gets you points. Challenge and boast. The challenge, you force your opponent to name one of the face down stones. If they succeed, they score a point, but if they fail, you get the point. When you boast, you claim that you know all of the face down stones, and successfully doing so wins you the game. However, your opponent can respond to your boast in one of 3 ways. First, they can believe you, in which case you score a point. They can doubt you, in which case you now have to prove your boast. Or the last option, stealing the boast for themselves, in which case you have to respond to their boast now with one of those first 2 options.
So let's begin with the pros, or the cool things about Tellstones King's Gambit. Well, right away you can tell that Tellstones is just no normal cardboard board game in terms of components. The box is made out of metal with nice engravings, but inside the box, there's a blue felt mat with a sword on the back, 2 marble point trackers to put on the mat, 2 well-made player aids, and of course, the stone. So the actual Tellstones in this game are made out of a really nice plastic that is just so nice to pick up, touch, and of course move around. The symbols are actually engraved onto the stones, which is a really nice detail. The rulebook is like no other we've ever felt too. It seems to be made out of cardstock. And there's a cool bonus with a handwritten letter that caught us off guard. It denotes that the Tellstones are a gift for someone's now grown child to play when shipped out to war, which is a sweet thematic bit of lore. To store all the components, there's an amazing insert that fits all the stones and marbles. 4 stones are going to fit in the lid of the box, which makes setup and takedown even easier. Basically, all the components are premium quality to ensure that Tellstones will last so many playthroughs. And it's super easy to just throw in a bag due to its size. So when you do get around to actually playing Tellstones, it's as easy to set up as it looks like. You just roll out the mat, grab any stone you want, put it in the middle, grab your marbles as score trackers, put them on the side, and you're ready to play. Now for what we found was good about the gameplay of Tellstones. And one thing's for sure, this is a simple game where it's easy to imagine the people of a medieval, magical land playing. All the actions are super basic, any old military grunt can learn the game, plus there's really easy to follow player aids. But before we go any further into gameplay, let's talk about the unwritten rules, which are absolutely core to the Tellstones experience.
The unwritten rules is basically the fact that you can actually say and do whatever you want during gameplay as long as you're still adhering to the actual game of Tellstones. So this means throwing off your opponent's memorization in any creative way possible. There is nuance in the actions where you tell your opponent to do something because you can misdirect them by saying one thing and yet pointing to another. During your gameplay, you may find that constantly pointing to face down stones and blurting out symbols that they may or may not be can eventually confuse your opponent. You can peek at a stone you already know while vocalizing how confused you are to make your opponent think that you know less than you really do. You can even brand the stones with a strange name like calling the sword a weird spaceship or the shield a British police helmet? Or how about taking a page out of King Santon I's strategy? Just talk about some other random unrelated things during the game to disrupt your opponent's train of thought. Honestly, there's nothing really stopping you from just standing up and just challenging your opponent to a fist fight in the middle of the game. Is it bad-mannered? Probably, but whatever gets you to win a game of Tellstones. This is not only great for banter, but it also allows for offensive or defensive strategy when it comes to memorizing. When you're on the offensive, you're constantly trying to derail your opponent's thoughts. On the defensive end, you're blocking out your opponent's words and concentrating on your own memory. The metagame outside of the actual game is a very clever use of board gaming as a medium. Essentially, Tellstones takes full advantage of the physicality of playing in person. There's just so much player interaction that can take place here, and really the sky's the limit with how you want to gesture and blabber to misdirect your opponent.
Okay, so now for the turn-to-turn mechanics. The fact that the game starts with one stone and you're building the board allows for some very open-ended decision-making. There's a lot of choices to think which two stones to swap and where to swap them, since there's no restrictions on selecting or swapping. Another cool mechanic is the boast action, where you say, hey, I know all the face down stones, and try to flat out win the game. So the thing is, your opponent can also claim the same thing in response, and at that point you can't counter boast them, the ball is completely in their court. This means that you always have to be super careful about announcing boast, because your opponent can always just take your boast, and then you're forced to give them a point, or have them outright win the game. Note that proving a boast will always end the game, so even if you're behind on points, you still have a way to decisively win the game.
So the unwritten rules piled on top of the nuance in boasting and your open-ended decision-making means that Tellstones has an extremely high skill ceiling. There's basically no limit in the ways you can throw off your opponent while at the same time using and maximizing your own memory capabilities. And couple this skill ceiling on top of a game that's simple to play and learn, and it's easy to imagine Tellstones as a popular game played throughout a fantasy land. One more pro we want to bring up is the 4-player 2v2 variant. This may be the favored way to play for some players, as there's going to be less tension in memorizing because you got another brain on your side. There's lots of room for fun teamwork here, as you can pick your teammate to peek at stones during your turn, and of course, choosing which stones you're going to announce when boasting, as you can now split that burden 50-50. But probably the best part about this team play is that there is so much banter that just happens when there's now 4 people in the mix, as players now distract not only their opponents, but they can also accidentally distract their own teammates. Oh, and the game does run true to time. The 10 to 20 minute mark is pretty accurate, though because of the nature and how free-form the game is, this still can vary quite a bit.
Now for the cons, the bad stuff about Tellstones. And the first one, and we keep an eye out for this in the shorter games, is the replayability. See, games of Tellstones can actually end up feeling super similar, because while the orientation of the symbols may be different, at the end of the day, you're still just memorizing where the face down stones are. Tellstones may be a victim of its own simplicity here, because all the stones function exactly the same. Some different variants with board setup, or perhaps an advanced mode that gave special statuses to symbols, would have been fun to see.
The second con is the biggest one, and this is where we talk about memory being used as the game's flagship mechanic. You see, memory in games is usually a means to an end. If you think about the classic game Stratego, you're memorizing their numbered pieces as a way to maneuver your own pieces better. In the board game Ricochet Robots, you have to come up with this solution to the puzzly game state, but you also have to remember it while you give everyone else a chance to come up with their own solutions. And while you can do a lot of dumb things to distract your opponent in Tellstones, at the end of the day, the game is just still won through better memorization. Whoever can just regurgitate the symbols better always wins. It's pure memory for memory's sake, so it doesn't actually feel like playing a fully fledged game with actual mechanics, decisions, and strategy.
The 2v2 variant is also a little rough around the edges in terms of rules. It's really odd that the rules say the teammates can communicate at any time, but then that kind of defeats the purpose of having both teammates memorize the stones, because they can just tell each other what the stones are when they have to boast. This just seems like a rules mistake that needs some smoothing out with a line that says, Teammates cannot share information besides agreeing or disagreeing to accept a challenge during the boast phase. They can say what stones they are comfortable flipping.
Now on to the scoring. First, we're going to give you the recommender score, which is how we try to critically evaluate the game by weighing our aforementioned pros and cons. Then the two of us are going to give you our own personal scores, which are our own opinions about the game.
Tellstones King's Gambit is going to get a 4 out of 10 from us. Okay, so Tellstones is undoubtedly a great looking game, with amazing components all around. But it's overpriced. Since you can only buy it from Riot's website that doesn't give free shipping, it's going to be almost $40 after tax and that shipping cost. That's too much to ask for this simple game that doesn't have a whole lot of replayability. If we were judging Tellstones by the gameplay alone, it'd be a 5 out of 10, dead on average.
Tellstones just feels like an excuse to spout some world building lore. It really does feel like a game that some random dudes in the fantasy world of Runeterra would play instead of a game that was designed in 2020. There's a lot of elements that are tied to the lore of Tellstones, like the simple gameplay and medieval icons. In fact, it even says that the 4-player variant comes from some dudes deciding to just get rowdy in a tavern and just kind of caught on in the world. There's going to be differing play styles with different groups because of how open the decisions are, which encourages players to keep playing the game with new people. This again ties into the whole lore building excuse going on here because you can definitely imagine some magical fantasy dudes just wandering around the country playing this game with strangers at taverns. And due to the insanely high skill ceiling, you can also easily picture people just playing this game throughout their life as they wander around, getting better and better at using memorization methodologies and also confusing their opponents with just better, acting, mannerisms, bluffing, whatever. That being said, for a game that came out in the 21st century with all of our new-spangled computers and phones and video games and whatnot, Tellstones actually does a really great job of actually being a board game with a really good sense of physicality, especially with the team variant. It could be a great drinking game if you want to just get really rowdy with banter and have lightning-fast games because of how forgetful the drinks will make everyone become. With the sturdy yet tiny components, you can basically play this game anywhere, from a bed, a bar, a park, it doesn't really matter. The game is that durable. You don't even have to worry about wind with these heavy stones. So we've pointed out that there's a high skill ceiling, but is it even worth playing this game that much to get better? Memorization is a weird skill that most games don't use as a mechanic at all beyond just memorizing the rules of a game. And so when it's the main focal point in Tellstones, all that memorization can mentally exhaust people. The thing is, Tellstones has an odd payout for how much concentration it requires. Sure, you get a huge rush during the cool boasting phase. But other than that, there's not that much fun coming out of the constant memorization. There's no cool combos, and the game always immediately ends after that fun boasting phase.
Tellstones would not be getting this much attention if it not for being a beautiful, overly produced game made by Riot. For a game being all about memory, it's really an unmemorable game. It almost feels like an excuse for Riot Games to just have a small physical game to sell, and then some people would buy it because it's really pretty, which essentially just boils it down to being glorified League of Legends merch. Unfortunately, most people are not going to get many plays out of Tellstones King's Gambit because of how memory heavy it is, and the inherently repetitive nature of the game. But here's the thing, you can play Tellstones in person for free. How do you do that? Okay, well, just get a deck of cards, take out 7 cards to act as the stones, and download the rules PDF online. That way, if you think you might like this game, you can easily try it out before dropping almost $40.
For me personally, I'm gonna give Tellstones a 1 out of 10. What the fuck? I'm sorry. I just cannot stand memorization as a mechanic. This score is also probably highly affected by the fact that I've only ever played over Tabletop Simulator because of quarantine, meaning that I'm missing out on a lot of the cool real-world possibilities of playing Tellstones. However, let me break it down why this game rubs me all the wrong ways. First of all, 2-player games are a really big no-no for me. When there's only 2 people, I'm going to be playing a TCG like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic. More often than not in our friend circle, if there's only 2 people available, a game night is not even going to happen. In regards to 4-player games that are short and super portable, Love Letter steals that slot. But being super portable isn't really a plus for me personally because I never have that need. We're always playing board games at someone's house, so there's usually tons of games just lying around. And I don't personally have a problem just bringing over a couple of my own games in like a backpack or a bin or something. Like, as stupid as this sounds, I almost never played Gloomhaven at my own house. Like, before lockdown, I drove that Chungus big box back and forth constantly between different friends' houses. Hence some of the damage that's on the box corners. So all that I'm left with now is the game of Tellstones itself, which I personally don't care for at all. In my opinion, it's too expensive for what it is, I really don't like League of Legends, and memorization isn't fun to me. You put all that together, and there's literally not a single reason for me to play this game and suggest it of my own volition. Like, I need something, anything, for the love of God, just to do mechanically during gameplay, but Tellstones is purely memorization. That's it. That's the entire game. I don't need a weird excuse to act like a distracting idiot at the table because I do that regardless of what game I'm playing. Tellstones catastrophically shat all over the bed and then proceeded to smear it everywhere as it rolled around in pee-pee poo-poo agony. 1 out of 10. I'm gonna go play Valorant or something. Jesus Christ.
My personal score for Tellstones King's Gambit, being a League of Legends fan who's played since middle school, is gonna be a 3 out of 10.
Defeat.
And here's the thing, this would be a 2 out of 10, meaning terrible, if not for the 4-player variant. Tellstones. The core element of this game, the memorization, just doesn't work for me in this game. And that's not to say I don't like memory, I do like my memory games once in a while. Like the card game, Memory, also known as Elephant, was really fun to me growing up, just matching pairs and getting cool combos. Then there's also Mario Party minigames that just have memory, and those are super fun. And so I realized that memory for me is probably best approached as a lighthearted aspect that isn't the sole focus of the game. And if it is the sole focus of the game, like in Tellstones, for there to be some type of timer, or like countdown, so it's more lighthearted. So I'm playing the game, flipping the stones over and marveling at how cool they are, but for some reason my brain is just not having it with this game. I'm memorizing the stones, and then forgetting, and then peeking, and then forgetting again. Oh God. This game really does feel like an utter chore. And throughout the game, my brain is telling me, look, it's just a game, relax, have some fun. But then when I do try to relax and banter, I'm forgetting what all the stones are. Basically, during this game, I'm super scared about the opponent challenging or boasting because I can't really respond because I don't know what the face down stones are. The 2v2 is a lot nicer for someone to help me share the burden of my terrible memory. The teamwork opportunities are also neat, with everyone just bantering and then confusing each other. But that doesn't stop the fact that 4-player Tellstones is still Tellstones and needs tons of memorization. Like my brain is telling me no, but then my eyes are telling me to keep trying this game because it looks so pretty. Yeah, I really wanted to like Tellstones, and as you can see from this Twitter post here, I thought it'd do really well. And I was wrong. Tellstones is not fun. I was anticipating something like stacking like stones and pulling off cool combos, but nope, nothing like that in this overpriced game. I'm really sad that the game is just going to be forgettable for a lot of League fans out there that decide to buy the game because it looks cool, and that might sour their impression of the awesome hobby of board games. Okay, well, to be fair, I'm pretty sure that they're listening to all the criticism, and we'll see what they come up with next. My fingers are crossed. Anyways, Tellstones for me is a 3 out of 10. Actually, that being said, a very low 3 out of 10. A very, very low 3 out of 10. Thanks for watching this breakdown of Tellstones King's Gambit. If you want to see games we recommend, check out the link in the description below. We have a bunch of our recommended games all in a nice catalog for you guys. As always, thanks to our patrons, we got John S, Manuel G, Brian C, Clifford H, Aaron W, Max B, Boyra, Jeremy M, C, Marius M, Charlie P, Quinton S, Sam S, and Travis R. And we got our 2 Mad Lads of Cardboard. We got Jeff L and ZL, and a special thank you to ZL for sending us this game to review. our Patreon link. You can see that below. And remember to subscribe and ring that bell for more board game content from Shelfside. Anyways, yeah, Tellstones, let me know what you guys think in the comments of this League of Legends merchandise, basically.